would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
And welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. We have the final debate coming up tonight. And, you know, I've heard it from all sides, from independents, Democrats, Republicans, black, white, Hispanic, Asian. It's come from all sides, and I think there is one agreement, and it's that this whole election cycle is, one, unbelievable, two, a circus, and three, absolutely no one that I've actually sat down and talked to about it has any hope for the future with either candidate. Even third-party candidates. Across the board, no one sees hope. And it's become a battle to, in a lot of their minds, it's a battle going, I just need to have the least amount of tyranny put onto my life. What candidate is going to do that? A lot of times you see the African American community tend to jump behind Democrats. And, you know, when I was growing up, I always heard Democrats are the party for the poor. And at that time, you know, being around some family members that were Democrats, a lot of them are not Democrats anymore. Many of them have wised up, but I've had a couple of them that were hardcore Democrats, and you really couldn't have too much of a conversation, but they would always say Democrats are the party for the poor. And I come to realize that is true. Democrats are the party for the poor. They are the party that wants to keep the poor class poor. They are for the poor, because without the you know, we're going to go in there and fight for you poor people. Well, if there's no poor people to fight for, that they don't have that anymore. And because there's such a large population of poor people, they love having that as a demographic, but it's slowly breaking apart, kind of like the whole openness that Democrats and Ku Klux Klan, not only in the South but in the North, were Democrats. But they had to slowly get away from that. And now we're seeing it again. They're slowly shifting away from being We're for the poor people. Why? Because, oh, the poor people are realizing under Democratic control, we're not any more prosperous than we are under Republican control. And again, it's probably been a year or two since I've talked about it, but the Democrats and the Republican parties of today came out of one party. And I talked pretty in depth about it, but just to kind of cover it real quick, the Democratic Republican Party had basically, and this was more of the Jeffersonian type of a Democratic Republican Party. So there were constitutional, values within this party. But there were the hardcore freedom people we called the Federalists. Federalist Party at that point had a lot of issues itself. And after they lost miserably, the Federalists faded away. At that point, you had one party, the Democratic Republican Party. Democratic Republican Party had infighting. They split into two parties, the Democrat and the Republican Party. And Ron Paul's talked about this, that we have a one-party system masquerading as a two-party system because they're not fighting on what the role of government should be. They're fighting on where the government resources should go towards. Should we make government bigger over here, or should we make government bigger over here? And you always hear the Republicans talk about, cut this department, cut this department. But if you really look at what they do, they might cut a department or, abolish a department. If they do that, it's only because they're creating a newer department. Or what they do is they go, well, we won't get rid of these departments over here. We'll create another department that oversees all those departments. Therefore, they centralize the control. Now, when we look at the debate today, I think it's representative of the one-party system. We have two authoritarians fighting on how they're going to use government force. And, we've had this for a while, but it's apparent, in your face, belligerent. Come on, we have Hillary running for president. She has no principle, moral to stand on to run for president. She absolutely should not be put into that position. And that's from her previous work in government. The Clintons are a family that have benefited, literally, financially benefited off the disasters that happen to others. And if you don't believe that, go to Haiti right now. Clinton Foundation's over in Haiti right now. But that organization is doing absolutely nothing to help the Haitians that are hurt by this the storm that just went through. But they are over there making connections for financial gains. The Haitians do not like the Clinton Foundation. But this isn't just Haiti. The Clintons, throughout their whole public history, has done this. And Hillary Clinton has also praised people in the past that have created organizations or companies that did this. But remember, they came out of the White House poor, broke, in debt. That's what she wants you to think. There's absolutely no point that the Clintons feared being poor. And her to come out and say that was a mistake. No. She knew what she was trying to do and say. She wants to be like you. But she really doesn't, because she probably thinks you should be sterilized. There's a racist history with the Clintons. And she still says stuff that the mainstream media completely whitewashes and makes it look like, see, she likes the African Americans because she talked about having hot sauce in her purse. Excuse me? That would be considered racist. That would be a racist remark. And I have black friends that see it as a racist remark. And they're the people, I have many black friends that, to be racist, they kind of put a little bit higher bar than what you might see in the media. The comment she made meets all of that. It don't matter if you have a low bar or a high bar. That was a racist comment. But, the media said, see how she relates to him because she has hot sauce in her. What kind of racist BS is that? But, of course, the Democratic Party, they're for the African American community. That's why, they were aligned with the Ku Klux Klan and fought the Republicans over slavery. They're totally racist. And they can distance themselves from groups like the KKK. But a lot of times it's the same people or the same families in it. And the new people that might have not been a part of that were mentored by those people. So to think that even though they don't publicly support KKK, that they all these families and older politicians and newer politicians that were mentored by the older politicians, some members of the KKK, all of a sudden just, we're not racist no more. We just had this big, great lightning that, made us not racist all of a sudden. I think that would be kind of ignorant to actually believe. Now, what about the Republicans? Well, the Republicans, there has been some of the racists from the left that have infiltrated the Republicans, but for the most part, I do find that many of the Republicans really don't care about race. They're not really, other than maybe running for office, they might bring the issue up, usually because Democrats do. But really, they don't care what color. They just want to know, can I start a business? Or can we stop putting regulations in place that, well, these big corporations don't have to really worry about those regulations. It's the mom and pop stores that those regulations kill. every time there seems to be major regulations passed, you see mom and pop stores have to close or downscale because of the cost or the permits now that they have that they don't have that weren't available, but because they passed the law, they didn't give a grace period. So now you just have to stop doing that until you can go get a permit, but those permits won't be available for 3 months. But don't worry, once they are, you can go right back to business. Well, what if that permit, you needing that permit, causes you to lose half of your business because, well, that permit would allow you to do half of what you were doing normally. Yeah, some mom and pops will be able to get through that. Some won't get that permit early enough and they'll have to close or move or they just give up and close because they're like, this is becoming too much of a headache. I'm not making that much money to put this much energy into. I can go work at a factory and make, $3,000 less a year. I'm going to go do that. I try to create something, but they keep shutting me down or preventing me from growing. Wow, you don't really see Walmart have those problems or big corporations have those problems. This is how monopolies have been created. This goes back to the Rockefellers and Standard Oil. Use government to create this grand monopoly called Standard Oil. Once the citizenry gets mad at this monopoly, what they do, they help write the new monopoly laws that don't allow for a monopoly, but really it does. Because Rockefeller came out of that owning stakes in every single company. He still had his monopoly. But guess what couldn't happen? No one else could get to the wealth that he had created because no one else can take that same path that he took. They can't create this big old monopoly to compete. And we see that today. What happens when you have a startup? They grow and they keep growing and they get big and popular. And then they're threatened with regulations or lawsuits only to immediately sell out to one of these large corporations. Then all of a sudden you don't hear about lawsuits or regulations coming down. Why? Because those would have been done and helped written by those corporations. But kind of backtrack here, back to our final debates tonight. I don't even know if I can watch it. I watched the last one and I didn't watch the whole thing, but even what I did watch, just I couldn't take it. And I support neither candidate. Personally, I do think that Trump did pretty well for the simple fact that he called Hillary out on a lot of stuff. Now he has his issues. He needs to be called out. Not going to debate that. But it was pretty interesting watching the mainstream media cover him calling Hillary out. According to them, he was just, talking out his butt while she was legitimately bringing up real issues. Okay, neither of them really truly brought up real issues that, us regular people actually care about. Other than maybe prosecuting Hillary. because we would have been prosecuted if we did the same thing that she did. Others have been prosecuted for the same stuff that her campaign, and her advisors, and all the people that were involved in this email scandal. If that would have been us, we would be in prison. Her, she's running for president. That kind of shows you what the Democrats care about. They don't care about transparency. They don't care about, principles or morals or people doing criminal acts. We kind of already know that. Democrats tend to bust people around in states that don't have any voter ID laws. They literally bust them from one place to the other. You don't have to show ID. You just find a dead person that's on a voter registration and vote. I want to get to this Ron Paul Liberty Report, Trump Clinton final debate questions we would ask. Now, these are questions they would ask. These are questions you will not hear in the debate. Because neither candidate can truly tackle the real issues on these. Because if they were truthfully tackling real issues, you would find out that they are not too far apart. They might be a little bit. Again, one-party system. It's 2 feet and legs on one person. Every person has 2 feet. Well, should have 2 feet. You're voting on which foot you want that person to kick you with. Let's go ahead and fire this Ron Paul Liberty Report up. Give me a second here. Get it fired up.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Well, very good. Tonight's the big night, the last debate during this election period of time, the election that will be determining the future of civilization.
That's right.
You know, the importance, I've always kidded about how important every election is, and they're not insignificant, but coming to the conclusion that there's never been a tremendous difference between Republicans and Democrats, and if there were, it seems like the deep state took over anyway. But anyway, there is a debate on. There's a lot of people going to watch it, and it's a horse race. It's entertainment. I think this is what I've observed so far. It's mostly entertainment. They don't get down to the serious issues. I guess there are some disagreements, on immigration and some other things. But what I'd like to do today is you and I ask the questions, and we'll pose them to each other, on what we would ask, if they all of a sudden called up and say, hold the debate. We want Daniel McAdams and Ron Paul to run the debate. So we better be prepared.
That's right.
And I guess the best we can do is we'll ask these questions. It could take a long time if we to get all our questions answered, but we'll ask these questions, and maybe we should just email them to them and see they might respond and send us their answers. But there's been a lot of subjects that they haven't touched on, and I want to start off with one. The subject is one of my favorite subjects because I consider it important, and it has to do with the Federal Reserve, Federal Reserve monetary policy. And the question would key in on the specifics of the principle of monetizing debt. Do either of the candidates believe that we should curtail the power of the Fed to monetize debt. Maybe they say, well, I don't know what the hell that means, but I think they know what the consequence is. This opens up the door, to spending, is if they can monetize debt. That is, the Treasury, the Congress spends money, the Congress, issues Treasury bills, and if the Fed buys them, they buy them with money they create out of thin air. So it opens up the door, no restraints, and since there's nothing backing the currency, it opens up the door to big government. And since this opens the door to spending, I'd ask them also, including in this, is which departments are you going to get rid of? Any departments at all? Even Rick Perry wanted to get rid of 3 departments. How many are you guys going to get rid of?
Which ones?
But there may be blank stares there because I don't think we're going to get very, very far by getting an answer on that. But of course, spending is the issue. Monetizing debt, the Federal Reserve facilitates all of this. And whether it's infrastructure or military spending, it seems like the real vehicle for encouraging the spending is this monetizing of debt. So I'd try to pin it down on them and say, do you believe that we should be concerned and should we do anything to curtail the power of the Federal Reserve to monetize debt?
Yeah, that's a great question.
What kind of questions might you ask them?
The only thing I've heard on that, by the way, is Trump saying you need to cut waste. And that's the thing that they always throw out when they don't really have an idea about real cuts.
Waste, fraud, and abuse to pay for everything that they want. We've heard that for a long time.
Well, if you don't mind, Dr. Paul, I'd first like to welcome our live guests because some of these people join us every day. We've done it before, and we just appreciate them so much joining us. It's almost like our morning coffee club. So,
right.
So thanks, everyone. Mine is similar. Is sort of my pet project, which is military spending. And this is what I would ask them on, not how much more, but some questions about it. And I would throw out our 2015 military budget officially is about $600 billion. I think you could double that if you add in everything, right. But that's 54% of total discretionary spending in the U.S. budget. Secretary Clinton's position has been, we must end the sequester, she says, of military and non-military. So she's an even-handed spender. She wants to end the sequester. Trump said he's going to eliminate the sequester. And here's Trump's answer on what he's going to do with the military. So they both want to increase. He says, I'm going to make our military so big, so powerful, so strong that nobody is going to mess with us. So, and I have a chart I'd like to put up to illustrate how weak and small our defense budget is. If you have a look, here's the U.S. $598 billion in 2015. And look around, Dr. Paul. Do you see anyone else in our neighborhood?
Oh, boy. And, what came to my attention when you showed me this chart was, if you look at the U.S. and that 598, which is much bigger, as you stated, and you look at the rest, first, it looks like we're pretty well protected by water. That's one thing. But when you look at it, you see all these other spendings, which are mediocre. But at the same time, if you ever superimpose that with the bases that we have, all the bases, the money that we're spending it over there. Yeah. And yet, of course, the threat to us being invaded is essentially nil.
Yeah. So the question is, with that chart put up behind them, I would ask the question, how much more military spending do we need to get to where you want to be?
Yeah, that'll be a good one. I imagine it would be hard for them to get pinned down because they're always looking to save all that wage so they can spend more. I have a question I'd like to ask them dealing with economic policy. There's a lot of jobs leaving the country, and I think that is so, but it has to do with, us exporting our inflation because we get to print the reserve currency of the world, and it makes it easy for us to spend overseas in various things. But other things, it's hard for us to compete. We have the regulations and we have the taxes, but we have another thing which is a major factor in our inability to compete, and that has to be with the cost of labor. Oh, you can't talk about cost of labor because you're attacking the middle class. No, the middle class has been attacked because of the depreciation of money, and inflation benefits the rich and the banks and all this, and the special interests like the military-industrial complex. So, no, the middle class isn't hurt because they need higher wages. That has been tried. It was tried in our Depression, and that's why the Depression got so long. So I would ask him specifically, do you believe in the minimum wage law? And I suspect that's been their position. But that means that the individual can't contract for labor. So if somebody wants to offer a job to an individual and the individual agrees that, boy, I'll do that for $10 an hour. I'm unemployed. I want to do this. But they come along and they say, that's illegal. You're going to get punished. The businessman is going to get fined or go to jail for hiring people. You're being harmful to people who are poor. So they're not allowed. They're prohibited from employing that person. So they said you have to give them $20 an hour because whether it's the minimum wage that boosts it up to 15 or so, or whether it's the pressure that the union can apply to manage wages and push wages higher than the market. But it's all done because they want to get votes, of course, but it's all done because they're humanitarians and they want to get them a fair shake. But real wages keep going down. Even today, there was a report, real wages are down again. And this is why there's a lot of people out there that are very, very angry, but they don't quite understand this. And then they wonder why jobs go overseas. So my question would, do you believe that minimum wage are a proper function of our governments, especially our federal government? And do you think there's any harm done by unions having as much power as they have that prohibits voluntary cooperation between individuals and companies who are willing to work and want to work for less than the artificial wage that some of our companies have had to endure? And one of the other things included in this that pushes the wages up, of course, part of the wage is these fancy bonuses, or not the bonuses, the retirement funds. Yeah. Just think of the cities and all the unions, how they push these wages up, and debt is the problem. But I'd want to know, what is their position? Are they open-minded to suggesting that maybe there's a gross distortion in the wage costs in this country through minimum wage laws and unions that prompts many of our jobs to go overseas?
And you'd almost think that'd be a no-brainer for Trump. You know, that's his main thing, his mantra. Jobs overseas, jobs overseas. You're pointing out an excellent way to prevent the jobs from going overseas by simply allowing the people to work for whatever they can get.
Legalize freedom.
Legalize freedom. The other one, and we've talked about this a lot on the show, that we've been very interested in, is motivating terrorism. It's really about national security. They both said they want to keep us safe. We've got to keep America safe. Both have determined to do more fighting in the Middle East. Trump says he wants to bomb the blank out of ISIS, presumably in the Middle East. And Clinton prefers the same end, but her approach would be more CIA, more special forces, no-fly zones, this sort of thing. But coming down to it, they both want to intervene a heck of a lot more in the Middle East. But there's been plenty of evidence, plenty of university studies, and even we talked last week about an FBI counterterrorism study showing that what motivates terrorism overseas is seeing U.S. attacks on people, on civilians, on places, on collateral damage overseas. So I would ask them, are you not worried that your interventionist foreign policy may be actually making us less safe and not more safe?
You know, that, of course, hits home because that subject came up in the debates, and I had a little confrontation with an individual who used to be the mayor of New York City. And after that little confrontation, actually, it was a great benefit in a political sense for me reaching more people, because it was obvious a lot of people, agreed with what causes terrorism. But today, he's still very much involved, and he's an advisor to one of the candidates. Yeah. So I don't see how that will change. But pinning them down like you want to on what do they really think, is cause of terrorism, because it's key to it. Is it George Bush's argument on why they come here or want to do us harm? Yeah. Because we're free and prosperous. I mean, that's not going to work.
It's almost like it's somehow a sin to look at motivation. It's a matter of self-preservation.
Yeah, you'd think so. Anyway, I have one that I would ask them, both of them, the question, what are you going to do about the drug war? Do you agree, as many individuals and a growing number of Americans are agreeing, let's get rid of the federal war on drugs, and the states are nullifying some of these drug laws. And there's so much abuse. Aren't you concerned about the abuse of civil liberties? Aren't you concerned about this being one of the key problems with the borders? Yes, we talk about illegal immigration, and there's a bunch of that to deal with. But just standing aside from that, the borders are very violent, mainly because of the drug warriors. And how can you see this prohibition on drugs haven't done any good at all? It's been a violation of civil liberties, our privacy, and all these problems. Can't you give us any hope that you would, at least reassess this? What about the prison situation? We have so many people in prison; they can be in prison for life, with no chance of parole, without having ever committed a violent crime. If you're a third offender on drug issues, that's sort of like saying, well, let's make cigarettes illegal because they're so dangerous and they kill people. But if we catch you 3 times sneaking the smoke, we're going to put you in prison for life. It's not a whole lot different than that. Besides, if they could get rid of this drug war, there'd be so much less violence. But here we have, 5% of the population and 20% of the prisoners. That's one thing that we're really doing great on. We have more prisoners than ever.
We're number one.
And then we say privatize. Of course, we'd like to privatize a lot, but we don't want to privatize and keep government functions in privacy. And, whether we have contractors overseas or privatize prison, because guess who lobbies, for these laws? It's the people who run private prison. Sure. They don't want this. The drug dealers won't like these laws. There are some very devout religious people who believe they're doing God's work by saying, "Oh, we're going to make sure that you don't indulge in drugs," not recognizing that prescription drugs are much more dangerous than the street drugs. They kill a lot more people. I would really like to pin them down, and it would be great, if you're doing this, these questions would be much better if you have some follow-up, because they're going to hedge and they're going to throw out some cliches, but they ought to be pinned down on how can you accept this, especially if you claim you live in a free society. Well, we have to protect people against themselves. They might do dumb things. Well, that's the opposite of a free society. That's an authoritarian society. So therefore, it can be used. This issue can be used to really pin people down on, are you an authoritarian or do you happen to believe in liberty? And right now, I'm afraid the authoritarians are running Washington, and the libertarian position of non-aggression isn't being well represented in this campaign, especially in this debate that we hear tonight. I don't think there will be any great champion of personal liberty.
And just from a strategic point of view, first of all, nobody could accuse you of being a Trump supporter or supporting either candidate. So that's safe territory. But, we were talking yesterday on the drive home about all of the blunders he's made in his campaign that would have just been an open door for him. And I think the drug war is a perfect one because he's a great messenger for this kind of message like you. He doesn't consume alcohol, doesn't consume drugs. He's very opposed to these. So there's no danger of hypocrisy. He could come out and say, here's my position. I think they're terrible. I never do them. I won't do them. But I'm going to, because of the border problems, because of the crime problems in the prison, I'm going to move toward letting the states handle it. It's such an easy win-win for him, and boom.
I think you could use that same analogy on the terrorism, because if you don't look at the real cause of terrorism, it's easy to be opposed to terrorism, but you should look at the statistics and find out how dangerous terrorism in this country really is, which is nil compared to so many other dangers like these drugs, the drug war. And the militarization of our police, those are the real causes. But it is a real shame that they won't look at this. But it's one place that I'm optimistic about. Things are changing. I mentioned the fact that some states are nullifying the laws, and maybe I always dream that what we'll do is we'll wake up like we did a prohibition of alcohol. One day they woke up and the American people say, hey, this is terrible. Yep. Let's get rid of prohibition. Of course, back then, the Constitution was changed. It was easy to be precise. and change it. Today, we do all these things willy-nilly, without concern for the Constitution. So it's a little bit more complex.
In the last area that we thought we would ask a question, and this, of course, this goes back to our longtime friend Lou Fisher, who's on the board of advisors of the Institute and the great scholar of the separation of powers. And I think we're both probably indebted to him for his scholarship. But this has to do with executive branch power, and it is a huge concern. Couple of things on Barack Obama, and he, by the way, is not the worst, believe it or not, on executive orders. He's so far a little bit better than George W. Bush, but there's still time to go. But he has issued 560 major regulations, according to the New York Times, and these would be having a significant social economic impact. 560, signatures. He claims the power to kill or detain Americans without trial. He claims the power to take troops to war, not only without a declaration of war, not only without an authorization, but without even notifying Congress. So he has expanded executive branch power in that respect. I would ask the candidates, do either of you have a plan to restore the balance envisioned by the framers of the Constitution, where the people's branch would be the number one branch, the strongest branch of government? Are you able to restrain and constrain yourself to allow that balance to be restored?
Well, let's not hold our breath for the answer, but I think it's a great question. But we have to remember that power is very corrupting, and it seems like even the best speeches that would talk about limited government, we've seen so many people that we've talked to before they came to Congress, and they're going to vote the way you want us to, and this sort of thing. Then they get there, and within a week, you can tell they're not going to do it. But it is something that we should hold their feet to the fire, and we've said so many times that the government we have is a reflection of the people, and right now there is a dependency on government. There's an entitlement mentality, both rich and poor. There's an endorsement of Keynesian economics. There's an endorsement that authoritarianism is so much better because we can't trust the people. They're not going to take care of themselves. So we're going to pick the worst of those people, put them in Washington to dictate to everybody else, and when they mess up, everybody suffers. It's a bad system, and the only thing that's going to solve this problem is reduce the size and scope of government. And a simple first step would be to send people there only that would, understand what the Constitution said and really live up to their oath of office to follow the Constitution. Of course, I'm not going to hold my breath for that. But anyway, hopefully we get a few of these answers tonight from the debates. It's not likely to happen. But these are the issues that should be dealt with, eventually, and the opportunity will be there because the current system is not viable. It is going to collapse on us, and there will be people rebelling against it. Let's hope that the rebellion is philosophic, more than physical and violent, because that is the only way to do it. Ideas have consequences. Good ideas have good consequences. And if you allow bad ideas to fester, they have consequences too, and they're all bad. And many of the questions that we just proposed are a consequence of the bad ideas that have given us bad consequences for a long time. And right now there's a time to change that direction. Hopefully that'll occur soon. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube and RonPaulLibertyReport.com. Go check them out. Subscribe on YouTube. Great reports. Now, with this last debate coming up, there's many Americans that just they're seeking alternative avenues, even when they're the ones that are still voting. I see a lot of people more interested now in local officials, who they're going to vote for local officials. And I've also seen the ramp up of TV ads, at least here in Indiana, when it comes to the local elections. It tends to now be hitting more people like, I can't change Washington. I can only hope I can maybe vote for someone that won't abridge my rights, but I don't see that happening, so they are looking more at their local level, which is what I think everybody needs to do. I know people that don't vote anymore. They say even at the local level, they don't feel there's ever anyone that's going to run that represents them, and maybe that's a good reason for them maybe to run. Um, I think we should have more, not Libertarian Party candidates, but Libertarian constitutional um, people running. And, it's funny when you look at some of these young people that claim they're socialists, but when you start asking them really specific questions, you find out that there's a libertarian streak in there. And it's overshadowed by the propaganda and the brainwashing that they receive in schools. And, if you start asking specific questions like, do you believe that the federal government should be involved in your sexual preferences or bedroom, deals? And most of them be like, no, whatever I do behind my closed doors with whoever I want to do it with is my business. You ask them, do you think that the government should take control of businesses to ensure that they are not discriminating? They'd be like, well, I don't want business to discriminate, but I don't think that the government should take ownership of all the industries. But at the same time, they have been brainwashed into believing that it's okay to go, hey, this person discriminated me, government, you should do something about it. At the same time, when you ask them, should government, be in control of industries? They go, no, I want to be able to create a company. I don't want the government to come take a company I create. Well, when you invite government into dictating your business practices, they don't need ownership anymore. They have it. You've given the control to the government. They might not have their name on it, but they're controlling the aspects of that company. That is what we have now, whether it be Obamacare regulations or telling a baker that they have to bake a cake for a gay couple. You've already done that. But see, in the brainwashing and the propaganda, they have been convinced, yeah, it can be your company, but you don't want that company to discriminate against you, so you better, tell the federal government, don't let them, discriminate against you because you're gay or black or Hispanic or white. Well, if they're going to control the aspects of the business, what ownership do you really have? The only ownership that you would have at that point is whether you are abiding by their rules. You have to take ownership of that. But you have no ownership of creating the rules. If you can't create the rules, then you can't ensure success. You can bust your butt, and a lot of people do, and are able to, work their way through all these rules and regulations. But there's a lot of energy expedited to that, keeping up with government regulations and rules. When if that energy was put more into the products, then you might have better products out there. maybe we wouldn't keep buying things that break all the time. We see it in the car industry, the electronic industry, that they have to continue to upgrade, 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 upgrade. They never have a chance to get something right that they've already been working on. Because time that they release that first, draft, as I'll call it, new technology in a vehicle that is now required by government. As soon as it gets out, before they can find all the bugs, because some of these bugs won't be worked out of it for years. But the time that it's released, the government's already talking about, oh, well, now you need to do this and this and this. Never a chance to work the bugs out of the stuff that they first, come out with. We have to get to a point where the market, the problem is after government puts all these regulations, they basically come in behind that and they go, well, now that, you got these regulations, when your stuff doesn't work right, we'll kind of give you a slide on that. Up to a point. Up to a point. Things don't have to be exactly perfect, as long as they work the majority of the time. It makes it hard to hold these large corporations accountable. You really don't have that ability to truly hold companies accountable, because there's enough laws passed within the government to shield them so that the government can continue to pass more regulations. Well, if you're going to pass regulations and it would bankrupt a company because of the damages that come out of this regulation that government requires you to abide by, well, we know this is all new technology and we're forcing it upon them, so we have to, make some laws to keep them from going bankrupt from making the technology that we're requiring them to create. Whether it be cars or the pharmaceutical companies. And you always hear, oh, this place got sued, they're held accountable. A class action lawsuit where a company might hurt or ruin people's lives, and time a class action lawsuit and all the people involved in it comes about, these people are getting maybe $1,000. Yep, sorry your son died. You're a part of this class action lawsuit. So, here's your cut from the settlement. And I've even heard of some class action lawsuits that literally came out. There were enough people in that class action lawsuit that it came out to, $100. So, if we can't hold them accountable, and they're forced to do this, all that adds up to a system that puts the little man last. How does it put the little man last? Well, a lot of these regulations, these rules, they create an environment that makes it so expensive to start up a company in a lot of these fields. that there's very, very, very slim chance of you ever reaching that level. So what do you usually see now in a lot of startups? See a lot of startups going, no matter what field it is, I'll never be the next Walmart. I'll never be the next General Motor, Ford, or Chrysler. I'm not going to be that. I'm never going to be able to create the extreme large corporation system that they have, because we're talking billions and billions and billions of dollars. Something that they were allowed to slowly create. And as they're doing that, they're also getting government to pass regulations on their behalf that prevents other people from coming up to that level as quick as they did. So even though that regulation was in effect when they first started doing this, they already had the things in place. So when the regulation passed, they weren't left behind, while the rest of the American people that might have wanted to start up the next General Motors to kind of be shit out of luck. So what are they doing now? You see a lot going on. I'll never be able to be that big. I'll never be able to bring in that much money. How am I going to bring in a decent amount of money that I'll be willing to do this? They create specialty, as I would call it, I guess, things where they only make a certain amount. They take their time. They try to make it the best possible thing, but they only make so many of them, and only the rich people can afford them. Now, that won't allow them to be as big as General Motors, but going after the wealthy people will at least bring in enough money, as long as they're creating a product that's reliable, but at least bring in enough money to be happy putting that effort and time into. And honestly, I think we should kind of go back to the smaller scale models. I've said this before. I think there should be more mom and pops and less big corporations. I'm not a big corporate guy. Now, I understand even the small companies tend to become corporates because that's the business practice of today. It's extremely hard to be a sole proprietorship in the economy we have now, because while everybody that incorporates kind of gets some of the again, part of the problem with corporations, get some of the responsibility taken off them and put into the company. This artificial entity that really doesn't exist, because the company is the people that are running it. But they go, oh no, it wasn't so-and-so, it was General Motors, it was Walmart, it was one of these big names. While, Joe down the street, that's a sole proprietorship, if he does something wrong, Joe gets sued. Joe loses his house. Where in a corporation, your personal house and your business building are separate things. But in a sole proprietorship, yeah, Joe, you operate as Joe, therefore anything Joe's can be, brought into this. Well, Joe's like, no, I started Joe's bait shop, not Joe's house. Well, your sole proprietorship, you didn't incorporate, therefore you never separated your house from you. What do you mean? This building is my bait store or whatever, and this building is my house. Two separate properties. It don't matter if you're sole proprietorship. Incorporated, bam, you separate that stuff. That doesn't mean that somehow they can't, cause you to have to sell your house to save the company or, bail the company out. But it does make it where, let's say, you know that whatever lawsuit will bankrupt your company. If you decide, I'm just done, I'm done with the company, you bankrupt the company, you still got your house. As long as it's paid off and you got money to pay your mortgage if it's not paid off. But we have a big problem with government interference. And the laws have all been written to enable the system of monopolies. Probably things you won't hear in the debates tonight. Sorry, I'm trying to pull something up here. Okay. Now, when we look at a lot of what's going on coming up to this debate, even before the last debate, we've been seeing all these emails come out of WikiLeaks. Now, I have mixed feelings on this. And reason I'm bringing it up is because Paul Ryan came out with a statement. Don't like Paul Ryan, don't trust him at all. I think he's part of the problem. He's exactly, we got to work with the other. Honestly, I wish no side would work with the other because that's exactly the problem. We have both sides working to pass laws that hurt you and me. Never them. They write themselves out of laws. When they say we need to get business done in Washington, it means we need to grow government more and more and more and more. It's a never-ending thing. We have these WikiLeaks dumps. Now, I do have a small problem with this. It comes back to, a constitutional thing. We see these activist videos of people going, I don't need a show ID, officer. Have I done anything wrong? No, I just need to see who you are. Well, if I haven't committed a crime, I don't have to show you my papers. I can be secure in my persons and papers. You do have a right to privacy. With this WikiLeaks dump, you have a lot of people on the right and independents that are going, yay, WikiLeaks, they're dumping all this information. The problem with it is you're basically supporting a group that's saying we're going to abridge people's rights to expose them. Now think about it. How many people have said stupid things, done stupid stuff, things that they're not proud of. They recognize their flaws. If we started opening all these doors, absolutely no one would like each other. If you really think about it, if you knew everybody's personal feelings, no one would get along. Now, I'm one of those people, I tend to get along with people I disagree with because I can separate things. I can be like, you say you believe in these things. I'm going to ignore that because I'm going to judge you by the fruits of who you are, your character, your principles, your moral. You might say you like this, but your actions and your character, I think, show something different. I judge people on their character. I don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat, you like Hillary or Trump, or you don't like any of them. I don't like any of them. You like Hillary, you like Trump. I might think you're naive or ignorant, or sure, I might think that position is just dumb. But I respect that it's your position. You're not out here doing wrong things. But that, again, that's why it goes back to you can't vote for someone just as a lesser of two evils, because what you're doing is you're saying by voting for them that I might not, do these things, but it's okay for this person to, hold high office and do those things. Or you're wanting them to do those things, but you aren't willing to do them yourselves. You say, we need Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and all this other government help. Okay, well, that takes money. Yeah, we'll get that from the government. Okay, where's the government going to get it from? Going to go get it from the rich people and the middle class to help the poor people out. Why don't you go get it from I couldn't go, do that. Well, you and your neighbors could. Go down. Oh, you don't want to put the gun in someone's face and force them to give stuff up. It's easier for you to just vote for someone that goes, yeah, you're going to do this. Otherwise, we're going to send the raid team in and kick you off your property and take your wealth. If you ain't willing to do it yourself, then don't vote for someone to do it for you. But, the Podesta emails that they put out do shed a lot of light on it. But I think we've already known this. The problem I have is not with these personal emails. My problem with Hillary is the emails that no one has. Why? Because they were destroyed. Where you go, well, that's a personal server. I thought you want the personal stuff to be personal. She might have created it as a personal server, maybe not. But she used it as a public office server. All of her public office duties were going through that server. If she wanted to keep her personal emails out of the public's eye, she should have did her State Department and her official business on an official server through the government and done her personal on that. And the thing is, they're holding public office. If they believe that official business was conducted on that personal server, they should get that personal server. And if it's proven that public office duties were done on that personal server, then she opened that personal server up to the public. Because guess what? You didn't separate the two. But again, I would be, happy if they go, okay, we have, we're suspicious of official business going across, her personal server. We go in, check it. We can't find any official, emails, so we're not going to release it. Oh, we found one official email. Guess what? She did it to herself. I'm not here to go, oh, you probably just, no, you know what? If you're going to hold that public office, you better be smart enough to do it right. But in the world we live in now, no, she could use her personal server and delete 30,000 freaking emails. Something that would put you in prison, would put me in prison, and she gets to run for president. But even better yet, then, she set a precedent for others. Whether she thinks she did, or even the FBI or the government thinks she did, she set a precedent. People are going to play the Hillary card. I didn't do it maliciously. I didn't know what I was doing. Now, depending on what poll you look at, we have Trump and Clinton tied, Trump up by 1, Clinton up by 5, Clinton up by 2. It's all over the map. I think reasons we will not know who the hell is going to be elected is because on both sides there are pocket supporters, closet supporters. They will never admit that they would vote for Trump or Hillary, but when voting day comes, they will go in there and vote for one of the two. But they don't. They're so ashamed of the two candidates running that they will not publicly support a damn one of them. But they will go in there in fear of the other one becoming president. I personally think that there's probably going to be more support for Trump than Hillary. And the reason I say that is because Trump already seems to have more hardcore supporters than Hillary. Again, there are closet voters on both sides. But I think the Trump supporters, the hardcore Trump supporters, outnumber the hardcore Clinton supporters. And I believe there's more people motivated to keep Hillary out than there is to keep Trump out. Why? Because they know Hillary. They don't like Hillary. They don't like Trump, but they don't truly know Trump. And they know they truly don't know Trump. They're like, you know what? We've done this old crap plenty of times. Let's try something new. And Trump is weighing on that heavily. Now, when it comes to the emails and stuff, I seen this out of the Washington Post. General Cartwright is paying the price for Hillary Clinton's sins. The Obama administration Justice Department has investigated 3 senior officials for mishandling classified information over the past 2 years, but only one faces a felony conviction, possible jail time, and a humiliation that will ruin his career. Former Joint Chief of Staff Vice Chairman General James E. Cartwright. The FBI's handling of the case stands in stark contrast to its treatment of Hillary Clinton and retired General David Petraeus, and it reeks of political considerations. Monday marked a stunning fall from grace for Cartwright, the man once known as Obama's favorite general, who pleaded guilty to the felony charge of lying to the FBI during its investigation into the leaking of classified information about covert operations against Iran to 2 journalists. His lawyer, Craig, said in a statement that Cartwright spoke with David Sanger of the New York Times and Dan Klaidman of Newsweek as a confirming source for stories they had already reported in an effort to prevent the publication of harmful national security secrets. Under his plea deal, Cartwright could face up to 5 years in prison and $250,000 fine last year. Petraeus cut a deal with the Justice Department after admitting he had lied to the FBI and passed hundreds of highly classified documents to his biographer and mistress Paula Broadwell. He pleaded guilty to a single misdemeanor of mishandling classified information and was sentenced to 2 years probation and a $100,000 fine. Clinton was not charged at all, what FBI Director James B. Comey called extremely careless handling of very sensitive, highly classified information. Comey said that although there was evidence of potential violations of the statutes regarding the handling of classified information, the FBI's judgment was that no reasonable prosecutor would have filed charges against Clinton or her associates. FBI Director James Comey testified on July 7th at a U.S. House of Representatives hearing on presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton's decision to use a personal email server while serving as Secretary of State. There is a lack of proportion just based on the facts that one figure, Cartwright, is getting severely punished and others so far have escaped the process, said Stephen Aftergood, director of the Project on Government Secrecy at the Federation of American Scientists. He's being singled out for prosecution and public humiliation. It's an implicit rebuttal to those who argue that other senior officials such as Clinton or Petraeus got off scot-free or got too light of a sentence. In its statement announcing the conclusion of its 3-year investigation of Cartwright, the FBI emphasized that his prosecution showed that the Justice Department is willing to go after senior officials, just not Hillary. See, we'll go after senior officials. See, we're doing it. Hold on. If you want to do it right, you go back to Hillary and press charges. Says here the FBI, quote, the FBI will continue to take all necessary and appropriate steps to thoroughly investigate individuals no matter their position, emphasis added, who undermined the integrity of our justice system by lying to federal investigators, said Assistant Director in Charge Paul Abate. That statement reveals that the FBI is trying to address public criticism that it gives senior officials like Petraeus and Clinton special and favorable consideration, Aftergood said. They seem to be trying to make a policy point, he said. The Justice Department would say they are not influenced at all by policy or political considerations. In the real world, of course, they are influenced. The announcement of the charges in Cartwright's guilty plea came on the same day that the FBI released documents that alleged the State Department, through Under Secretary of State for Management Patrick Kennedy, offered the FBI a quid pro quo for altering the classification of documents found on Clinton's private email server. The State Department maintains Kennedy made no such offer. The FBI said no deal was struck, but it would investigate the issue. Still, the FBI's unprecedented release of documents related to its Clinton investigation show the Bureau is keenly aware of the public criticism of Comey's decision not to recommend any charges, and the mere fact that Clinton had the State Department along with an army of lawyers negotiating with the FBI over the investigation shows that playing the field is not even for the targets of such investigations. Petraeus, for his part, had several top U.S. senators publicly calling on the FBI to exonerate him before he cut his deal. Cartwright, by contrast, was short on high-profile Washington friends. He had long ago run afoul of his two Pentagon bosses, Defense Secretary Robert Gates and Joint Chiefs Chairman Admiral Mike Mullen, who never forgave him for going around the chain of command to join with Vice President Joe Biden to present Obama with an alternate plan for Afghanistan troop surge in 2009. Cartwright's greatest mistake was not talking to reporters or lying about it. He failed to play the Washington game skillfully enough to avoid becoming a scapegoat for a system in which senior officials skirt the rules and then fall back on their political power to save them. And you can read the rest of that at thewashingtonpost.com. And again, the title of that one was General Cartwright is Paying the Price for Hillary Clinton's Sins. But by doing this, the FBI isn't showing, at least they're not showing me that they're real willing to go after senior officials. They're showing me that they will scapegoat someone to say, hey, we really care about our job. No, you care about your political career, and there's a big difference there. And if they were going to actually show, they would go, hey, we would recommend charges. We are reconsidering what we said, and now we are recommending charges be brought. And then when the Department of Justice decides not to bring the charges, then we'll go after them. But how do you expect us to go after the Department of Justice for not bringing up charges when you're telling them you're recommending them not bring up charges? You're the investigators. It's really becoming the biggest joke, not only here in America, around the world. This is becoming a joke. Give me a second here. Okay. Now, we've heard Trump talk about the election being, the election being rigged. We had a local news channel that goes, we went and we attempted to find out how easy would it be to rig the election. Of course, election officials go, oh, it would be so hard because everybody does it different, and no area is the same, and anybody can run or sign up to watch the votes, and all these measures are in place. And then give me a second here. I'm trying to get all this pulled up. And then at the same time, we find out that here in Indiana, top election official alleges more voter fraud. And this coming out of the Indy Star. Top Indiana election official alleges more voter fraud. As a Republican presidential nominee, Donald Trump repeats his message that the general election process is rigged. The top election official in the home state of his running mate, Indiana Governor Mike Pence, said, of course, these stupid pop-ups. Give me a second here, guys. And I don't know why it's doing this. However, a leading election official in Hamilton County, also Republican, said labeling the discrepancies as voter fraud is. Oh, sorry, I probably skipped a whole spot here. I'm just having all kinds of issues over here. But basically, if I can get back to it. Um, okay, Indiana Governor Mike Pence said he was found. He said she has found thousands more incidents of what she characterized as potential voter fraud. Republican Secretary of State Connie Lawson said her office has found voter registration forms containing first names and birth dates different from what voters provided. She said she has handed those altered records over to Indiana State Police for review. However, a leading election official in Hamilton County, also a Republican, said labeling the discrepancies as voter fraud was a hasty conclusion. Lawson's allegations also come just 1 week after a Tippecanoe County election official acknowledged that the Secretary of State's voter data system could be manipulated by those wishing to cause harm. Lawson said the discrepancies were discovered when voters checked online with the statewide voter registration system to see whether they were registered and could not gain access because their names or birth dates had been changed. These records were changed on paper forms at the BMV and online, Lawson said in a news release. At this time, my office is not sure why these records were changed, but we have evaluated the statewide voter registration system and have found no indication it has been compromised. Lawson said in the statement, we believe this may be a case of voter fraud. Though Lawson said thousands of tampered forms were discovered, neither office spokeswoman Valerie Orchaw nor state police would reveal precisely how many. I've been getting a lot of reports about this. Many people, and they've already admitted in the thousands. You gotta realize, in the thousands, they won't tell you if it's 2,000 or 20,000. But this is happening statewide. So either people are going in and changing it, which I believe they're doing it paper form and online. I believe that there is some organized voter fraud going on. But this doesn't surprise me. We see it all the time. There have been buses full of voters, Democrat, bussed around, where the people that organize this have researched. Okay, these people are registered to vote, but they have never voted. We can try to get there before they do. Because if they get there after, guess what? Their vote won't be counted. Because they'll think that the second vote they'll knock that one off. Or, hey, this person's still on the registry to vote, but they died 2 years ago. You'll be that person. Now, this happens mostly in states that have no voter ID laws. People are like, voter ID laws discriminate. No, they don't. Because it doesn't matter if you're white, black, poor, rich. If you don't have your ID, you can't vote. That's not discriminating. Well, it's easier for rich people to get their ID. Not really. Not really. You can go panhandle enough money to pay for ID. If you want to vote, you're a Democrat, guess what? The Democrats, if you're going to vote for them, will pay for your ID to go vote. Believe me. Both sides would do that. What it does is it prevents people that are not who they claim to be from voting under someone else's name. It prevents people that have died from mysteriously voting. But they don't want that. So we know that their voter fraud, it's been documented multiple times. Documented. That, yes, it happens. I don't want to play too long one, but I do have a clip here from AMTV and Christopher Green. He talks about basically the establishment losing control and rigging the system. Now, I will go as far to say that the establishment isn't losing control. I want to say that they're losing the majority of control where they had it before. The establishment had the majority. Now they would have to share it, and they don't want to do that. But let's go ahead and get into this AMTV with Christopher Green.
Media television. I'm Christopher Green, and you're listening to AMTV, Alternative Media Television. It is, of course, Wednesday, October 19, 2016, and we have the third debate tonight, which I think is absolutely critical. In fact, I did a very important video yesterday on demand titled Donald Trump Campaign on Life Support Unless This Happens. I encourage you to watch it. Click the link below. Start your free 14-day trial. Support us. Here's what the mainstream media, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Silicon Valley, that's working directly with the Hillary Clinton campaign, by the way, Eric Schmidt, for example, advising Hillary Clinton on her entire digital infrastructure, by the way. People like George Soros, of course, funding not just Black Lives Matter movements and gross destabilization here in the United States and Europe through pre-planned engineered migration, which has been a byproduct of a covert and now very overt and well-aware operation that the United States has been making through intelligence agencies, etc., in the Middle East, places like Libya, toppling of Muammar Gaddafi, the intended destabilization of Syria, which has resulted, of course, in a total and absolute humanitarian crisis with up to 500,000 plus people slaughtered and murdered at the hands of this attempted Western coup, which has thus far just killed people and provided a training ground for World War III, yet has failed to ouster the rightful sovereign leader and president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad. But outside of all that, what you really need to know, and I think what's important today, Wednesday, October 19, 2016, even outside of the debate, is that the establishment really is losing control. That is not hyperbole, and it's not an exaggeration. It really is true. You know, Hillary Clinton has actually mentioned Alex Jones, for example, by name. Barack Obama has referenced it. The mainstream media continues to talk about the alt-right media. Now, notice I've talked about this incessantly, how they called it alt-right. It kind of demonizes, you know, the alternative media. They didn't call it alternative media. That would have shed light and truth and said something positive. Again, verbiage is very important. My point being, though, the establishment is actually losing, not just with the acknowledgement and validation of what we're doing, what you guys are tuning into, what you're sharing, our videos, etc., and everybody involved in this truth movement, but also that they're losing control. So let me explain. There's been, several damaging videos that have come out, specifically from the Veritas Project. Mr. James O'Keefe, who again worked back in the day directly with Breitbart before he wound up dead conveniently when he had, bombshell information on Barack Obama and said it would end his end him completely and end his presidency. But, he wound up dead, and then the guy that did his autopsy, of course, died too, so they couldn't do a proper autopsy. But outside of all of that, we've had many videos, not just from Veritas, but others, and many other sources reporting the fact that the voting system itself is rigged. That, for example, a report that we just dug up today shows direct links to George Soros. Many of the voting machines, for example, I think at least over a dozen, and in notable battleground states, are actually owned by a company of George Soros that he took over, I believe, in 2005, if I remember correctly. And he owns actually handling the voting process in your state or your key battleground state, like in Florida or even here in Arizona, which they say, at least if you're to believe the mainstream media, which we know they can't be trusted, is actually up for grabs, even though historically we're a very, very Republican and conservative based state. My point here being is that the establishment is losing control. Now, Obama said yesterday that it's absolutely ridiculous, something along these lines, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, that Donald Trump would suggest that the U.S. election process is rigged. Donald Trump has been putting out into the public consciousness, because he knows, just like you do and I do, that the system is rigged. Obama's had to address this and call it out as whining. He's asked Trump to stop whining, and is saying things like it's outlandish to think that the U.S. election isn't transparent, and that these voting machines, physical ballot counting and digital counting, which is pretty much what it is now, they're digital machines, couldn't be trusted by the population. Almost like we're a third world country, right? It's every other country that can't be trusted, but of course you can trust the United States, even though every damaging leak that even recently has been coming out, and this is going on for years, of course we knew it was happening all along, from, for example, the Podesta emails or WikiLeaks, or what Edward Snowden showed the world with the National Spying Agency, or the fact that these politicians are bold-faced, directly lying to all of our faces on a regular basis. They're absolutely two-faced. They say one thing, and they're doing the exact opposite. Whether or not it's Hillary's health, which they denied, and then she collapses and comes out that she's had concussions and blood clots, and she's on Coumadin, and all these other hosts of issues, right? And collapses on 9/11 because she can barely stand. Well, we're not really talking about that anymore. And of course, the American people don't care about, the Clinton Foundation scam and the hundreds of millions of dollars that they've accumulated as a result, without selling a single physical good, widget, or even a digital product, but just really essentially a pay-to-play scam while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Just they're being bought by foreign leadership and governments like Saudi Arabia that treat women like shit, by the way, yet Hillary Clinton wants to still call herself a feminist. Now, I can go on and on, Benghazi Gate, et cetera, the transferring of guns, the creation of ISIS, which didn't even exist until Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama got into power. I can go on and on, but I'll save that for a separate video. The point here is the establishment really is losing control, and we are winning. You see, the idea that the U.S. election is rigged, which it absolutely 110% is very, very dangerous. You see, if the American people begin to believe, and this is just the truth, that the system is rigged against them, that the money system is rigged against them, that the voting system is rigged against them, that the media is rigged against them, that the educational system is rigged against them, that the healthcare system is rigged against them. And this is all a mode and system of indoctrination, propaganda, and control, which it absolutely 110% is. Why do you think there's a multi-billion-dollar corporate-owned mainstream media in the first place, which owns the same very politicians that and doctrines of which are pushed by those that really move the heartstrings and inner workings of Washington, D.C. and global politics, people like George Soros, etc. Why do you think it even exists? The system is rigged. The whole thing's an illusion. Again, just like the money system. When people wake up to the idea, which is just knowledge and truth and light, an absolute factual, for example, that there's no difference between a $1 bill and a $100 bill. It's the same piece of crap paper it's printed on. People begin to lose faith in the economy. They stop spending, or they hoard, or they stockpile, or they divest their funds, for example, into real tangible assets, things that actually hold value, not worthless paper. Well, the same idea, a dangerous idea that they don't want to really be put out into the mainstream, is that the election process is rigged, the electoral process is rigged, the odds and cards are stacked against you, and it's all being controlled. You know, the minute people believe that and wake up to that is the moment we actually do become a third world country, and people pick up their pitchforks in the streets, and everyone meets at the White House in Washington, D.C., and sets it ablaze. That's the honest to God truth. It's notable to see the validation that the mainstream media, the president, people like Hillary Clinton are giving, not just alternative media, but also these ideas, trying to discredit the idea that the system is rigged when it is. I mean, think about this for a minute. How are the votes actually tallied? Right? Have you actually really investigated this for yourself? So you go to a balloting, a polling area, right? A physical booth, and let's say you physically vote at the ballot box, and then those are collected in a box, and then somebody allegedly seals those boxes. Okay, I don't know who's monitoring them or how there's transparency there. They allegedly seal the box. Then they take the box, they give the box to another group of people that we're supposed to trust. Usually they're like sworn officers of the law or government agents, which I don't know who's, how that's transparent, because I don't know who's monitoring the government agents as they're transferring the actual physical ballot boxes to a government facility, typically in your city, town, or state. And then those boxes that have been sealed by the people we're supposed to trust and then handed off to the other people that we're supposed to trust that aren't being monitored. It goes to that government facility in your city, town, or state, and they do a digital count through the same machines owned by, and I can prove this. In fact, I'll put a specific link to this in the description below, that are owned by people like George Soros that fund Hillary Clinton's super PACs in the millions of dollars and overtly destabilize the United States political process and are literally physically destabilizing it with mass migration and destabilization of the Middle East. So who's monitoring them? And then, of course, all these polls, and most of it is moving digitally now today, is then counted through big technology companies like Google, et cetera, that oversee the campaigns of Hillary Clinton, et cetera, all of Silicon Valley. I mean, the only person that doesn't, essentially, and is even donated to Donald Trump, is Peter Thiel. And he was actually almost fired over his political beliefs, according to a tweet that was just sent out the other day. And then it's all integrated with big tech and the huge monopolies that are self-interested to elect Hillary Clinton. And we're somehow supposed to trust this process like it's transparent, like it's not rigged. Again, who's monitoring all these people? Are you? Are you physically there? Is there a third-party, independent, transparent agency monitoring each transaction, each vote, each polling booth, each government office, facility, each person? Then who's monitoring the monitoring? Who's monitoring those that are supposed to be the third-party, transparent parties? Who's monitoring them? And it goes on and on. You see, this whole thing is easily rigged just with a keystroke. Just with a keystroke. It's that easy. The government and the mainstream media will tell you exactly what to believe and exactly who won. Now, let me give you a physical, concrete example why Donald Trump is right. Nobody shows up to Hillary Clinton rallies. You can see it with hardcore evidence with your actual eyes when you see the pictures of the people at her rallies. There's no one there. It's just her minions and the people that she's bussed in. Which, by the way, one of her buses dumped sewage into the street the other day. She just took a big shit on America. I'm not even making that up. That's true. You compare it to Donald Trump rallies as he's flying around the country, and I've attended one of them here recently in Prescott Valley, one of our smaller cities here in Arizona. A venue that only could hold 5,000 people had just about, from the estimates I saw, 15 to 20,000 people show up, and it was wrapped around the building. Yet when you look at the polls, the mainstream media tells us Hillary Clinton is winning. How is that possible? What we can't trust and believe our own eyes? My point being here with this video is that the whole system is rigged. The idea that Donald Trump's putting out to the American public right now is dangerous, but it's also true. And it's exactly why the President of the United States, the Manchurian candidate, Barack Obama, and Hillary, Ron Clinton, are trying to discredit that message and discredit that truth, because they know, as well as you do and as well as I do, the minute the people believe what Donald Trump is saying, or not even what he's saying, they just believe the idea that the system is rigged, which it absolutely 100% is, they lose control. They lose power. The people, in aggregate, again, are more powerful than those that aim to control the masses. That's when the pitchforks come out. That's when things are, God forbid, set ablaze. That's when there's populist rage and anger and physical action in the streets. And they lose. Same thing goes for the money system, the criminal Federal Reserve, the fact that the dollar's backed by nothing. It has no integral value, tangible, real value at all. It's just a total illusion. And it's based on faith that it's actually worth something and that you'll be able to transact in it. The minute people lose faith, the elites lose everything. Whether it's money, or it's polling, or it's media, or it's anything else for that matter. That's the real truth. And I think really the great success, even if Donald Trump loses, he's exposing the giant elephant in the room. He's exposing what a criminal institution Washington, D.C. is, what criminals these people actually are. People like Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and others. Now, I still think Donald Trump can win. I absolutely think that he can. But I also think that the election is rigged. As I suggested and recommended in yesterday's content and the videos that we put out, and thank you for your tremendous support, I ask that you remain vigilant, folks. Go to your polling stations. Investigate for yourself. Become an independent rogue journalist, such as myself. Send us anything you find. Monitor those not being monitored. We saw a classic example of this yesterday with part 2 of the Veritas project released on the voter fraud scandal and how just out in the open it is. Where's the FBI there? Where's the investigation there? How come Hillary Clinton's not talking about that? You know, one of the guys who visited the White House, dozens of times in recent years with direct connections to Barack Obama. The system's rigged, folks. The system is rigged. It's all digital, and they can manipulate as easy as pressing a single button. Get it out everywhere. I'm Christopher Green. Make it viral, hard-hitting and in your face. And click link below.
Christopher Green, AMTV. Go check him out. Subscribe. Now, I think it's pretty evident to most free-thinking Americans and people that have a decent knowledge of computers to know that, yes, these can be easily manipulated. Had one, who was that? I'm trying to remember the name. But we had one person testify that, hey, yeah, they can be manipulated. Let me see if I can remember, find the name. I can't remember who that was. I'm not finding it right away. But there was even a local Fox affiliate, not here, but I forget where it was. But they had tested the Diebold electronic voter machines, and they confirmed that there's voter fraud on them. You can hack these. They're very easy. And then there was and a lot of this you can find on the internet, find on YouTube. You can Google it. But there was also the another example that, in 1 minute, literally 1 minute, they hacked a e-voting machine. It was a government. I still can't remember the name, but it was a government programmer that testified that voting machines are rigged. There was also cases that people were claiming they were trying to click on one and it kept highlighting a different candidate. This happened so much that The Simpsons put out a episode. But this one, of course, they twisted. And it was Homer, he was trying to vote for Obama, and it kept switching it to a different vote. But it's actually happening. But it was happening in the opposite way. People were trying to vote for other people other than Obama. And somehow, if they pressed the candidate they wanted, it would light up Obama. If they pressed right below where the button was, it magically would select the one they would want. But if you're just, pressing buttons real quick, trying to hurry up and get this done because really no one trusts the political class, are, again, voting for the lesser of two evils. So let's just hurry up and, vote for the lesser of these two evils real quick. If they're clicking the one right below Obama, it was highlighting Obama. How many of those people know if their vote was counted? How many of us think about it? You might have voted. Is there any way for you to go to check to see that your vote was counted as who you actually voted for? The whole emphasis that, the voter count, it can be trusted, and if you don't believe it, you can go watch them count it. Well, if it's all electronic, how do we know the printouts from the electronics? You can sit there and count the little paper receipts that come out of these machines, or you can go on a computer and say, see, this is what it says. We're not telling you a lie. But what insurance do we have that those those votes are the actual votes that people made? You don't. Hence why the paper ballot was a little bit better. Why? Because you would have to have that piece of paper that they punched right there. And they go, yep, no, that wasn't Obama, that was someone else. Look, they punched the other hole. Now you could say, hey, they could put, replace them with a different one that's already pre-punched. That's a legitimate claim. I don't go watch them count votes. Why? Because, again, we're voting for the lesser two evils, and I don't agree with evil. Not going to do it. So, we're going to have this final debate tonight. I'm expecting it to be a joke, a circus. I hope Trump does, throw some hardballs at Hillary, because he's the only one doing it. Mainstream media is not, holding Clinton to the same standards that they're trying to say they're holding Trump to. Again, just like the FBI investigation on Hillary's emails, we're going to hold her to a different standard than the rest of the people. We're going to hold Hillary Clinton to a different standard than Trump. When a lot of what Trump believes in is kind of unknown. because he's contradicted himself in the past. Where Clinton, she might say one thing, but we've seen her actions. And then now with these WikiLeaks email dumps, which I still have a problem with, because we're still setting a precedent that your private information isn't not private. Well, in a way, it's not. There are hackers. But by going, it's okay that WikiLeaks does this, or if it is Russia, if not whoever it is, it's okay because it's exposing the corruption. You don't need to expose the corruption. We live in the corruption. You don't need to do that. We know it. And anybody that doesn't know it is living in a fallacy. And the evidence being dumped is not changing their viewpoint. They go, oh, it's probably manipulated. It's probably all fake anyway. Blah, 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 blah. They don't care. These people have a cognitive dissonance, and they don't care. They live in this fallacy, and they're happy in it. On both sides. You're going, oh, any of these sex allegations against Trump are just, BS at the Clinton campaign. Well, probably a lot of it is. And I already know quite a bit of them. The stories are becoming unraveled, where things aren't connecting like they would in a legitimate, issue like that. Some of these women's stories are already unraveling. And the thing about it is, we have to hold everybody to the same standard. And if any of these sexual allegations against Trump are true, why would you vote for him? But we already know all the corruption that Hillary is. And we already know, Bill Clinton and all what both of them have done to the victims of Bill. Hillary is known to attack and have people attack anybody that might ruin her image. Why? Because she's been working to this point since she became infatuated with the ideology from Saul Alinsky. And again, read her college thesis. Look at everything she's done, everybody she's supported, everybody she likes. Margaret Sanger. Look at all this and go. Has she changed? Or has she been working to what she talked about in that college thesis? And I think if you look very carefully, you'll see, hey, she might have had to scale back the speed that she thought she was going to do it in, because she thought that, well, Saul Alinsky, this great thinker and great ideology, but I can do it better, bigger, and faster. She believed that Saul Alinsky was only the stepping stone to a bigger and better and brighter vision that she had of his ideology. She's like, I love what you're saying. This is how we do it, bigger, better, faster. The way that she talked about Saul Alinsky and how she could be bigger, better, and faster, I think it proves everything. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you this Friday. Stay tuned here on UCY.tv.
Jazzy Skate.